And welcome back to Speak Freely here, where we celebrate the freedom of speech. And in today's topic of conversation is my boy, Dr. Jordan Peterson. So recently I had the privilege of watching one of Dr. Jordan Peterson's TV interviews, and I don't remember exactly which one because he's done so many lately and I watched tons of them, and so I didn't bookmark it or get the name of the TV show or radio show, but I do remember what he said. And what he was talking about is it is something that he's talked about before, so it's not so off the cuff or unusual for Dr. Jordan Peterson to say. But the topic or subject that he was talking about is the fact that he believes that one of the reasons why young men and young women of today find themselves stuck in sort of this perpetual state of adolescence is because of hookup culture, or just the readily of sex or free sex. That he says that there is no urgency for young men to mature, as well as for young women to mature. He talks about, or use an example, if you go back to like the 1930s, 40s, 50s, or even earlier, where sex before marriage was discouraged. It was frowned upon. It wasn't promoted. And so for a young man to have regular sex, he would have to get married. Now, that's not to say that no one was having sex outside of marriage. Of course, you had the divergence, you had people sort of sneaking around, and prostitution has been a thing like forever. But for a young man to have regular sex, he had to get married. Now, again, that's not to say that men only got married to have sex, but he knew if he wanted to have regular sex, he would have to get married. Therefore, there was a sense of urgency for him to get his shit together. He had to put himself in a position where he looked attractive enough, and I'm not just talking physically, but he looked attractive enough, or he was a good prospect for marriage, so a woman wanted to marry him. He had to have good career or good job prospect lined up or already be working. He had to have ambition, and he had to have a good portfolio to show that he'll be able to take care of a wife, a child, and a home. So there was an urgency for him to get his shit together so he can get married, so he can, get to the cherry at the end. And for women, there was also a sense of urgency to grow up, because most women knew shortly after they get married, most likely they would start having children. So they knew they would have to be a mother, a wife, and take care of a home. So again, there was a sense of urgency for women to mature. And also, birth control was not readily available at the time, and so women did have to be a lot more careful who they had sex with, because abortions weren't readily available, and there was a more sense of shame that was put upon women who had children out of wedlock. So women were a lot more protective of their womb area when it came to sexual activity. And so I totally get that, but I even want to take it like before that, like in the 1800s and beyond, where people had very short lifespans, and so people had to grow up a lot quicker because life was shorter. So back then, and even today, in today's 2018, in other countries and other cultures, young men became men as soon as they hit adolescence, and young women became women as soon as they had their period. So back then, and today in other countries and other cultures, girls were getting married at age 13, 14, 15, having children around the same age. So again, there is a sense of urgency to grow up and to man up. You had to get your ducks lined up in a row. You had to get your shit together, straighten up and fly right. You had to put yourself in a position where you can take care of a wife, a children, a home, and you had to put yourself in a position where you can protect those things. You can protect your wife, your home, your children, your property, everything you have. And the same thing for girls, and they had a sense of urgency to grow up, because it wasn't a lot of time to be children. You didn't have years and years of childhood and adolescence. You were a child, you had a short period of adolescence, and then you were an adult. So it was a sense of urgency to grow up and mature. So young girls became mothers a lot quicker and a lot sooner, and so they had to take care of a house, they had to take care of their children, they had to be a wife. And as well as, again, birth control was not only not readily available way back then, but a lot of women died in childbirth. So you're even more protective over your womb, because you wanted to make sure there would be a man around, because if you did die in childbirth, there will be someone there to take care of your children. So women were even more protective over their womb. So basically, it just encouraged monogamy in so many words. So now you fast forward to 2018, where hookup culture is very prevalent and very much promoted on media and advertisement, on social media, and progressivism and liberalism and feminism is very, very much pushed, and it started along with the sort of sexual revolution. So men nowadays don't have a sense of urgency to get their shit together, because to get sex, you pretty much have to be able to buy someone a cheeseburger and look relatively attractive, and even less for women. So there is no urgency to get your shit together, to straighten up and fly right, to get your ducks all lined up in a row, because you don't have to. Most men and women, when they're in their teens, in their early 20s, their mid-20s, they're not even thinking about marriage anymore or children. So you have the privilege to sort of stay young a little bit longer. And so I understand what Dr. Jordan Peterson is saying when he says hookup culture is encouraged men and women to sort of stay in this perpetual state of adolescence, which he also feels like is unnatural for us to be. We're not naturally supposed to stay in a perpetual state of adolescence, so it's harmful to our society and it's harmful to the individual, eventually anyway. Dr. Jordan Peterson also believes because of men or young boys not growing up to be men soon enough is one of the reasons why women find themselves unhappy in relationships, or why relationships aren't working in the first place, is because even though progressive of the left would like to tell us there are no biological makings of men and women, we are all exactly the same, but even though we've moved away from our tradition, or the way our society used to be back in the 50s or 1800s, where our society promoted monogamy and women biologically and instinctually looked for certain things in men, even though liberals would like to tell you that doesn't exist, that is just all a lie, that is a biological making of women, and we still look for that. We still look for the strong, protective men to protect and to provide and to feed and to house and all those things, but we have a society of men who aren't capable of doing that because they haven't prepared themselves to do that in the first place. And the same thing with women. We've been told that feminism, or being feminine, being soft, being vulnerable, taking care of the home is old school thinking that we need to do away with. So even though we've done away with tradition, doesn't mean our biological instincts have just stopped looking for those things. And so therefore we find ourselves unhappy because we're not being satisfied, or our biological instincts aren't being met, I guess, if that makes any sense. So I agree with Dr. Jordan Peterson, and I think you have to be blind, deaf, dumb, and stupid not to actually see the evidence here today. Now, in saying that, just like in my video that I made, did the sexual revolution destroy marriages and the traditional family? I say yes, but I'm not ready to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I'm not ready to rewind our society back into the conservative, stifling society of the 1940s or the 1950s. I like my freedom, and I like having the choices to be whomever I want to be without the scrutiny of society telling me that I'm forgoing my biological obligations. I don't want to go back to living in Gilead. Okay, not that extreme. Gilead is a Handmaid's Tale reference, by the way. I like the idea of people having the freedom to choose the life that they want. At the same time, I still agree and understand what Dr. Jordan Peterson is saying. I think as a foundation to our society, conservative ideologies and conservative ideas is good for our country, but I think that has to be balanced with liberal ideology and liberal ideas. I want to live in a more moderate, libertarian country where people are just free to do whatever they want. That means if a woman wants to be Joan of Arc, or if a woman wants to be Betty Crocker, she can do that without the judgment of anyone else, without feminists telling her that she has internalized misogyny, or without conservatives, again, telling her that she's a whore and a slut and she needs to get married and knocked up by the time she's 18. You know what I mean? Like, again, I think things like, religion for a country and conservative ideas for a country, part of that, yes, I think as a foundation is good for a country, but it's not a one-size-fit-all. You can say that most women will be happy living this type of life. Like, most women are a size 7.5 in shoe, but not all women are a size 7.5, and most men are a size 13 in shoe. I'm just guessing, but not all men are a size 13. On a general societal level, I agree with Dr. Jordan Peterson, and I agree that these ideas should be implemented back into society in a balanced way. But on an individual level, I still think the individual needs to decide what is good for the individual. Decide what you want. Just because something is socially acceptable now doesn't mean it's still good for you. If hookup culture is socially acceptable, doesn't mean that you need to go hook up. Or if you live in a really conservative religious family that makes you sit on your knees all day and pray for hours, doesn't mean that that's the way your life needs to go either. You have to make those choices for yourself. But again, as a foundation to our country, I do believe societal standards are good, but balanced with liberal ones. I travel full time, and I like the idea of having a sort of live and let live lifestyle when it comes to myself. And I know right now, if I was sort of settled down with children and a husband and a picket fence and a dog and all that good stuff, I probably wouldn't be too happy because my personality type is just not very conservative. But I know once I do have kids, I definitely want a husband by my side, and I want my life to be a lot more stable. Not super conservative or traditional, but a lot more stable. I like the invention of the birth control pill. I like that women can take control of their reproductive organs, even though I don't like the idea of abortion sort of being celebrated in our society. I like the idea of women being able to be more free to express themselves sexually. But again, I just think we've gone too far with progressive ideas, and we need to be balanced. We fought against conservatism for so long that we've just gone too far, and we need to swing the pendulum back the other way. But I don't want to swing it extremely right either. But what do you guys think? Do you agree with Dr. Jordan Peterson that hookup culture is basically kept men and women in a perpetual state of adolescence that is destroying not only themselves but our culture? Or do you agree with me that yes, conservative values is a good foundation for a country, but balanced off with liberal or libertarian values? Or do you just not agree with me or Dr. Jordan Peterson and just say, fuck it, progressive is the way, all day, every day? Leave your comment in the comment section below. Like, share, and subscribe, guys. You can follow me on Twitter or donate to my PayPal, because you know what, sister's never going to be able to monetize this channel. And then that's it, guys, from Speak Freely, and peace.